From Dream It to Reach Labs, Andrew Ackerman has sat on both sides of the table, founder and investor. Today, we dig into what actually moves the needle for early stage founders. Welcome to the show, Andrew.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Super excited to be able to jump in with you. Very, very interesting story that you have. And anyone that is listening live, you definitely, if you're a founder or an entrepreneur, you definitely want to be able to stick around and listen to this. So, Andrew, let's start at the very beginning. Where were you born, and what early experience best foreshadowed your life in startups?
I was actually born in Tel Aviv. My dad was studying medicine in Israel when I was born, and a couple of years of experience with socialized medicine firsthand got him to change his mind and come back to the States. Ironically, entrepreneurship kind of skips a generation in my family. I think it's fairly common, right? You have like both my grandparents were basically entrepreneurs. One was a candy shop owner, which was awesome growing up. He'd like buy candy shops in like edgy neighborhoods. Neighborhoods would get better, and then he would sell them and open up a new one.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. And candy's great, right?
Totally.
And then my other grandfather did everything from Zippo lighters to insurance products, but they all died a little before I was, when I was in grade school. One of them passed, and the other one passed when I was in college. So really, like, I didn't have any entrepreneurial influences with my family because, like all those, that generation, they wanted their children to be in stable professions. So
Yes.
it's kind of a theme in my life that like I've gone out there and I've had to do things with with fewer people to lean on than I would have liked to.
Interesting. Very interesting. And then, what did John Hopkins teach you that still shows up in your day to day work and everything that you do?
Interesting. Other than the fact that like now I can talk lacrosse with people, which is kind of esoteric. Uh, it's the overall experience really. So I sometimes joke that if Hopkins had been more fun, I wouldn't have gotten into the business school I gotten into. But it was a good mix. I had like good people there. It was an econ and poli sci major, which was a super interesting combination for me. Like to this very day, when I read things, there are references to things that I read, in class there. And just in general, like economics is a fantastic way to think about the world.
Hmm.
In fact, I have a daughter right now in University of Michigan in her sophomore year, starting to take econ, and like I'm watching her fall in love with it all over again, which is a special kind of joy.
Definitely. That's really really cool. How many kids do you have?
Well, they move around a lot, so it's kind of hard to say. No, I got three daughters. I
That's
got
super
three
cool.
daughters, all teenagers. So, karma, kismet, and payback.
Awesome. Awesome. That's hilarious. um,
Yeah,
so so you did bring up your MBA. You did that at Chicago booth, right?
yeah.
Um,
In fact, before it was called Booth. That's how long ago.
very cool. Can you tell us a little bit more about that experience? What made you decide to go ahead and go there, and the decision of your framework that ended up sticking?
So it was kind of a tough call. I actually went directly from undergrad to get an MBA, which is pretty rare.
Hmm.
In fact, in part, it was like I just didn't know what I wanted to do otherwise. So I figured let's just apply to business school and see what happens. And I was a little bit surprised, like everyone else was. But I had a good family friend who was very involved in Chicago booth. And when I came down to like, should I do this? Should I do something else? Should I defer? He called me up at 6 a.m. on a Sunday morning and said, "You must go to Chicago booth." So I did. Fantastic school, great people, super sharp professors. Like, could not recommend it more, except for the weather. But you know that.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Since I'm Chicago based, you're in New York, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, just a little bit warmer during the winter, I would say, over in New
Well,
York.
I was on Lakeshore Drive in Chicago, so I got that effect. But now I'm in Riverside Drive in New York, so same but different.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Very cool. Yeah, that's super awesome that you have that Chicago connection. And you were mentioning a mentor as well. Can you talk a little bit about them, who they were, and any lessons that you learned from them that you still repeat today?
Yeah, yeah. So, I started to say early on, like as a theme, I didn't really have any one person that I could go to with these kind of questions, right? So, in undergrad, I don't think I had anybody. So, like the question of like, what am I going to do next was
Mm,
fairly open. I'd say the first person that I kind of consistently thought about, like, I want to get his idea, is a guy named Avi Savar who ran Dream It, the fund that I joined. uh, and the thing that really kind of got it for me is he had all the characteristics that I hope I have, or I hope I've developed, right? The ability to see an opportunity and move on it very fast, right?
hmm
There are people who overanalyze opportunities. There are people who jump in like way too early. Like he's got that right balance between, um, I know there's enough here. I'm going to go jump on it at the right speed. He also has this really good sense of like, I know this person can handle it. I'm going to have them do it. They can actually do it better than me. I'm going to step back and let them do it, which is something that especially a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with. They struggle with being able to find somebody else to say, like, hey, they can do this. I don't have to. And just in general, he's a great guy.
That's cool. And when you're talking about the entrepreneur that struggles with, it sounds like a little bit of control. Are you talking about even like their technical co-founder and like letting go and giving them the power to make
It's
decisions?
across the board, right? So on the
Okay.
one hand, your startup's your baby, right?
hmm
You don't want anyone else to mess it up. So it takes a while before you can kind of trust them to do things. And what's more, like you have, certainly when you're starting a startup, you have this grand vision up here, right? And you can see it clearer than anybody else.
hmm
So, you know, if you give it to somebody, like something gets lost in translation. So you're worried. You're worried it's not going to happen. Now,
hmm
sooner or later, you bump up against the calendar. There's only so many hours in the day. Right? It doesn't matter if no one can do it as well as you can't do it all. So ultimately, you have to do that. And, embracing that. And then coming around to like that first time where you're surprised that, oh my God, that's not what I had in mind, but that's actually better. Right? That's a huge milestone for a lot of entrepreneurs.
Yeah, that's really insightful. I can't exactly remember, but it was a while ago that an entrepreneur would always just bring everyone into the office for their startup and be like, "Let's do every bad idea. We're gonna write down every bad idea on the whiteboard." And they ended up coming up with a great idea because it took away the pressure of having to come up with good ideas, and they did it
Mhm.
collaboratively, and it was something that they were never able to come up individually.
I like that. Like everyone says, you should brainstorm. Let's just put ideas up, no judgment. But I like the idea of even just phrasing it like, hey, give me your bad ideas because somewhere in there, there's a kernel of something that might be interesting if you kind of turn it on its side.
Totally. Yeah, and then it also takes away that pressure of everyone like needing to give a really good idea, right?
Well, yeah, yeah. I mean, there are people who like some people are, they don't want to let it out until it's like
hmm
perfectly polished, right? But like then you miss the opportunity to get other people's input along the way. It's like that
Totally.
archetypical tech entrepreneur, like sitting in his darkened room with the hoodie on, just coding away for 6 months, and then coming out to the world with like, his tablet as opposed to the 10 commandment tablets for like, I give you this app. And then all of a sudden people are like, we don't care about five of those commandments, right?
That's
Like get
hilarious.
feedback early.
Totally. Totally. Cool. And then out of curiosity too, do you remember that first time that you took your entrepreneurship journey, whether it was like really young, even before your first business, just out of curiosity, like what made you an
Yeah.
entrepreneur?
I'll tell you the first kind of official one was when I left consulting and I decided to join my first startup. And there was a little hiatus in between there because like in so many ways, like, you know, you're never quite sure how to get from here to there. Right. So at the time I was working at a large consulting firm. It's a great place, right? Good place to work, good people, like very intellectually challenging. The main problem was I'm dealing with like Fortune 100 clients, and that's like trying to steer an aircraft carrier, right? They don't move fast.
No.
And what's more, a lot of our projects were, well, let me phrase it, not a lot, but there were a good, significant minority of them where management kind of knew what they needed to do, but they needed to bring in consultants to like get a little extra like street cred behind them to like sharpen the pencils to the exact numbers. And like I hated those because they were blatantly obvious what needed to get done, and then we'd waste 6 months. Like I was on one project where it's been a while, but I'll still kind of anonymize it a little bit. It was a large manufacturing firm was going to buy one of its a component manufacturer, but they needed to figure out like how much they should pay for it. So they engaged, my firm, Booz Allen, great firm. Now it's Booz and Co. And now it became Strategy and right, great firm. They engaged us to kind of figure out, well, how much is this thing worth? So we dug through like newspaper clippings, literal clippings back then, to like figure out like how many people they had in their machine shop and like how many square feet the plant was, and really build from the bottoms up the economics of
Mm.
that plant. And they hired an investment bank to kind of go top down based on their earnings and comps. And between the two of us, we came out with like, hey, the company is worth somewhere between like $40 and $44 per share. And it was trading at like 28 bucks a share. So
Oh
like,
wow.
go buy it. Right.
Yeah,
So to
value.
anyone in the startup world, it's like, boom, I'm going to go do it. Let's go buy it. Now to large corporate, they're like, well, was it 40 or 44? Can you guys go back and like figure it out? So we wasted like another like 3.5, 4 months. I mean, we didn't care. We were billing by the hour. But and then we came, okay, the answer is, I don't know, like $43.30, whatever the number was, right? I'm
Hmm.
like, great, we're going to buy it now. The only problem is the stock had gone up from 28 to 32 bucks just
Hmm.
because they diddled. So
Yep.
they lost a huge chunk of value to get an added layer of specificity that no one needed. And we don't do that in the startup world. We don't have that
Mm.
time to waste. Right? That's what I mean by finding that right balance between what's good enough to act on. So like that was it. That was one of the turning points for me. I'm like, I'm not going to do consulting. I got to get out. So then the question is, well, where do I go from there?
Hmm.
Right. So going from like consulting to one of your clients, that's kind of an easy glide path.
Hmm.
But that's out of the frying pan into the fire, right? As far as I was concerned, that's the wrong
Totally.
direction. Like, no, 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 I wanted it smaller. So I moved back to New York. Took a job at Kaplan Test Prep.
Hmm.
The SAT prep. That's
Yep.
they were trying to move all of their stuff from like in person and CD-ROMs. Remember CD-ROMs?
Yep. I do.
We,
I do.
my first startup, we actually made a Christmas tree decoration all out of the AOL CD-ROMs they kept selling us, sending us. Oh God, that was crazy. So
AOL, AOL, um, um, what dial-up just ended up shutting down like 2 or 3 weeks
oh
ago.
yeah, there were people
Finally.
still paying for it because they thought that was how you got the internet. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
It's nuts.
Also, their unsubscribe button never worked. Right? You keep pushing,
Oh.
nothing happened. You had to actually call them. Anyway, that's not my problem. So anyway, like I go in there and like they're trying to figure out like how do we compete with all these new startups? This is back in 99, 2000, and on this interwebs thing. So they wanted someone who was an ex-consultant to come in there and like, figure out their strategy and actually start, specking out and building these new products. I'm like, that's awesome. I'm going to learn how to do this internet thing on your dime.
Hmm.
I call it like my big consulting detox phase. And within 9 months of just being back in New York and reconnecting with friends, just talking about it, by 9 months, I was already like pulled into a startup as the third founder of a startup that dealt with summer camps of all things.
That's cool. Yeah, and can you talk about that first startup a little bit more too? Just out of curiosity, you said startup for summer camps.
Yeah, yeah. It's a company called Bunk One. It's still around though. All the original founders and I think all the employees have kind of moved on since then. It's been a while. Um, sure. The number one thing about startups, I think that everyone needs to know, is you're gonna make a ton of mistakes. Like no one makes no mistakes in the startups. If you're lucky, none of them kill the startup. So we got lucky that way. But we made a
Hmm.
lot of mistakes. So this is like 2000 when I joined. So you can kind of imagine what the world was like. AOL, CD-ROMs. There were like, people, I have a website. It's 3 pages of brochureware. It's basically like a trifold on the web.
Yeah.
That's the world we're walking into. And we're trying to come up with, this site for camps to do all these other things for them.
Mm.
We started off with like photo galleries, right? Hey, I want to see pictures of kids at camp, right? I'm a parent. Seemingly simple. That was hard in 2000. It really was hard. sending messages to kids that you and I could do by like just typing it at our computer. The kids didn't have to be near a computer, like stuff that would get sorted and printed and given out to the campers. That was moderately hard. Right? No one had that. So we started off with those things, bunk notes and the photo gallery. Those were our core two products. Well, we went out there and we started selling them, and from there it kind of increased and increased. And by 2008, I'd ultimately gotten bought out, and I'd moved on to my next thing.
Cool. That's awesome. And last thing on your early you, if we took a peek at you at college and then to you now, what would surprise us most, you being in college?
Uh, huh. I don't know. My hair kind of looked the same. That's still surprising to me now. I'm just thankful I still have most of it. No, so
Totally.
I'll tell you what I think. I was a lot more, I won't say proactive, but like, if you ever like had a team and there was a team breakout, like I was in there, and like not not aggressively, but just by normally I'd be there and like, okay, I'm organizing, right? I would kind of take the lead there. Over time, I've gotten a lot more comfortable sitting back and let other people do it,
Mm,
which is a little counterintuitive, right? You think that like when you're junior, you're in the back row, and then when you're senior, you're in the driver's seat. And what I've learned over time is number one, like I can't do it all myself,
hmm.
right? So I want other people to be capable of doing it. I want people to like grow and take more and more off my plate. And also, the old expression, right? If you're the smartest guy in the room, you've hired badly,
Hmm.
right? So I want people in the room who can teach me things I can't do, because otherwise, what do I need them for?
Exactly. Hmm. Very interesting. Yeah. I mean, that does make complete sense with your success being a founder and then your success being an investor, right? Is just giving the keys to the kingdom to a certain extent and allowing people to do what they need to do in order to make it work, right?
Yeah, well, I did a lot of that wrong in my first startup. I just managed not to kill the startup in doing it that way.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we're over to your rapid fire round. So just the first word that jumps into your head and just kind of blurt it out, just very quickly through the list. Book you gift most.
Wait, say that again?
Uh, a book that you gift the most.
My book. No, I'm just joking. What do I give the most? Probably pass. I don't have one that I give most.
Well, then we're just gonna go with your book then. You
Yeah,
know.
we'll go with my book. Yeah, my book. It is
uh,
now, believe it or not, but yeah.
yeah, I mean, when you get a
Oh, wait,
book,
no, something popped up. To Kill a
oh
Mockingbird.
ah, very good one, very good one. Favorite New York City coffee spot for founder one-on-ones.
Ooh, I have a new favorite now. It's called Chaotic Good Cafe.
Ooh.
It's like a D&D gaming theme place. You walk in there, they got tons of games on the wall. When you order your coffee, you roll two 20-sided dice, and if you get two 20s, it's free. I've never gotten it yet. What are the odds? You can work that out. The one thing is they don't have a cappuccino machine, so I'm really torn.
But it sounds like a cool experience. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah, I like it a lot. Good people, good vibe.
yeah, yeah. Do you play chess with your founder one-on-one while you're drinking your coffee too?
No, like, listen, I've enjoyed chess, but it's such a long time commit.
Oh, checkers, got it.
Nah, no, we're talking startups. That's the best game in town.
Totally, totally. One word pet peeve in a pitch deck.
Ooh, one word pet peeve. Tam Sam Sam. I know I cheated a
Ah,
little bit.
that's completely fine. You're allowed to cheat. Well, why with that? Because it just seems so standard in pitch
No,
decks.
because like if you give me a Tam Sam sides, Sam Sam side, I
Mm-hmm.
know that absolutely with total confidence two of those numbers are wrong, and probably all three.
Ah.
Right? Your total addressable market is total. Why give me one number that's huge and has nothing to do with what you do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, the automotive market is $7 trillion. Well, big deal. You sell cup holders. What do I care about the
Oh,
steel? What do I care about the
yeah.
leather? What do I care about the
Yep.
rubber? Right? Okay. And then they're like, and then one of those numbers is like, if we only get 1% of the market, we're like, good luck. That's a wish, right? That's not a plan. So
Mhm.
maybe the one in the middle makes sense, but it's probably top down, which is usually not that useful, rather than bottom up. So it's just totally useless. I feel like the guy who came up with that idea ought to be lined up against the wall and at least smacked around a little bit. I mean, listen, you ask. Like, here, I'll tell you how you can make $100 easy, right?
Yeah.
Get two investors who swear by Tam Sam Sam. Have them to quietly write down their definitions of each of those three things and say, I will pay you $100 if your definitions match. You will never lose that bet.
That is wild.
Yeah. That's the biggest problem, right? If it doesn't mean the same thing to everybody,
Totally.
it doesn't mean anything.
Totally. Huh. Very interesting. We'll jump into that a little bit more later on. Um, product fit or distribution first? Pick one.
Good question. The answer is you need both, right? So
Mhm.
it's like, the old joke, like not the old joke, but do you back the jockey or the horse, right? I've never seen a horse win a race without a jockey, and I've never
Mhm.
seen a jockey run as fast as the horse,
Totally.
right? You got to have them both. But if you make me pick, you got to have product market fit because otherwise you're distributing nothing.
Mhm. That makes sense. Very cool. Your default first question in a founder intro call.
Oh, well, it's on Zoom. It's always like, hey, where you calling from?
A little quick icebreaker.
Well, I'm just curious, right?
Yep. Totally. Yeah. Find some mutual connection. Um, cold email subject line that actually gets you to open
Not a damn thing. Don't do it.
it. Why is that?
Well, it's like zero. Okay, here. I know this
Hmm.
is rapid fire. This is going to be a longer rant. Are we good with that?
Yep. Yeah, we're
Okay.
totally good with that. I
So,
opened that
Colin,
up.
you ever do enterprise sales?
Yes, yes, I have.
Okay. So, when you were doing enterprise sales, what was the average contract value? Ballpark.
Uh, like anywhere from 100,000 to almost a million.
Okay, great. Let's go on the low end. So, let's say you were looking to do $100,000 annual like SaaS sale.
Yep, yep.
Before you sent the email to a prospect, you spent no time at all or hours trying to figure out exactly what they needed, what was going on in the company, who the right person within the company was, what motivated him or her, like
Hmm.
maybe even where they went to school, some kind of connection. And then maybe on top of that, saying, who do I know who can make a warm intro? A or B? B, right?
Hmm.
So let me ask you a question. You're coming to me for 10 times that much money, sometimes 30 or 40 times that much money. Why do
Hmm.
I get a BS cold email?
Mm.
Right? You're
Got it.
selling part of your company.
Yep.
Like not that I deserve, like I'm saying, I'm not entitled to it, but like, why would I ever, why would I ever trust you to do enterprise sales if that's the way you try to approach fundraising?
Mm.
But don't worry. If you've done that before, if you're a founder, don't worry about it. I didn't read your email. I won't know that you did it wrong the first time. You can always go back and do it right now. I didn't
Love
even
that.
read it. That's fine. I don't remember it. You have a clean slate.
Absolutely. Yeah. So in other ways, make it personable to you and focused, and also give you what you want to know and what's in it for you.
And one step
Essentially.
up, get it to me through someone I trust. Yeah. I
That
mean, warm
those.
intros are the gold standard. I will give. Okay, I usually get to this later, but I'll give one little hack away. Right.
Hmm.
So I always get like, what if I have no connections to the guy? Do I just not reach out to the investor? And I used to say, okay, listen, like just make it like right up front, like absolutely clear what the value is, and you've done your homework, and maybe they'll open it up, but like probably not. But I've come up with a better solution. That actually works much better. So, Colin, if you're trying to raise money from me and you have no connection to me, don't cold
Hmm.
email me. Cold
Hmm.
email one of my portfolio companies,
Mm.
ideally one that's in a similar space so that maybe you could do business with, and
Hmm.
say, hey, I don't know, Jennifer. Hey, Jennifer, I see that Andrew's invested in your startup. I'm thinking about trying to raise money from Andrew's fund. I'd like to learn a little bit more about what he's like as an investor. Now, founders get far fewer cold emails like that than I do.
Hmm.
So maybe they'll open it. And what's more, founders are like, they're in the same boat as you. Maybe they're like a year or two ahead of you. So there's like a lot more empathy there. and
Hmm.
like you're not hitting them up for money anyway.
Totally.
So the idea that they might take that call, meet you for coffee virtually or in reality, at a good cafe if you're in New York, and you actually can form a real relationship with them.
Hmm.
And then, if they're founders and you got something good and they actually fall in love with what you're doing, like that's awesome. They'll probably say, "Hey, would you like me to introduce you to Andrew?"
Hmm.
So if you're going to do, I call Portco Jujitsu, like, look at who I'm invested in, maybe get your warm intro through them. You can cold call them, and maybe that turns into a warm intro to me.
Yeah, I love that, and you're providing a value, not only to you but to that other company that you have the relationship with. And if the partnership is created, it just is able to compound and cycle through your portfolio, which is more interest in you. So,
Exactly. If my portfolio, these are people I've invested in because I trust them to make me money. If they're saying, hey,
yep.
Colin's got something, that's a great intro.
Hmm.
B, like if you're already working together and creating value, well, that helps too. And sometimes I'm just lazy, right? If you're saying I've
Hmm.
already done that first call and this person's not a clown, I'm like, okay, you know, you've qualified the lead for me.
Woo!
Yeah,
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. And founders definitely listen up. Different kind of strategies, you know. So awesome. Well, thank you for diving into that. I think that's going to be pretty key for some people listening as well. Um, let's talk about your experience from transitioning from consultant to founder really quick. Um, so what pulled you from strategy consulting into building an actual product?
Mm. So we talked a little bit about that. It's like
Hmm.
I'd spent like 4 years kind of yelling, "Hey guys, you got to turn left," and then like
Yes.
6 months later, like somebody at the oars is like, "I think I hear something." So I mean, that was while the work was intellectually challenging, the people were good. It wasn't as rewarding.
Hmm.
And bear in mind also, I came out of business school in '95. I remember in like '93 and '94 walking past a computer and seeing Netscape right on the screen and
Uh-huh.
thinking, wow, for those of you people who have no idea what I'm talking about, it's like Chrome, but several iterations earlier, right? One of the
Yes.
earliest web browsers. And I remember thinking to myself, if there's ever anything more than government data sets on this thing, it's going to be huge. I mean, I
Mm.
didn't know it was going to be important, but I knew something would make it huge. So, but that's it. I remember that. So when I came out of business school, um, there wasn't this whole like I'm going to join a startup. Right? I mean, there were VC funds. There was one guy in like my class of 600 was in VC. Nobody knew what Ben did. Right? No one understood it. I mean, I do now. It's funny. Like I kept in touch with Ben because we used to ski together. And now it's like 10, 15 years later. I'm like, okay, Ben, I get it now. Because now I'm doing what he's been doing all along.
Totally.
But we didn't know that. Right? If you were an entrepreneur, you were kind of like, I don't know, unemployed. So, it was consulting or investment banking. I pick one, right? If you want marketing, you're in the wrong business school.
Hmm.
So it took a couple of years. And then all of a sudden, fast forward to 1999, and I'm in the UK. I'm in London working on a project where this very large oil company is buying a also very large oil company. And they've got these teams where they have to like come up with pro forma financials for what the merged company will look like. But the
Mm-hmm.
problem is anybody from the two teams who sees the other company's financials is contaminated. So if the merger doesn't go through, if like the antitrust right, departments say, no way, those people are contaminated. They can't go back to their old jobs.
Mm.
So it's a kind
Interesting.
of a career killer for them if it doesn't go through.
That's a lot
So
writing on the line.
yeah, so we created, with the help of another like more technical firm, an intranet application where everyone could submit their numbers blind. We'd press a button, go out to Covent Gardens, have like, curry, whatever, come back 2 hours later, and then it would merge the data into a merged pro forma financial with nobody else seeing anyone else's data. And as that was happening, I remember that's it. This didn't exist 4 years ago, but that's what I want to do. Right.
Hmm.
And that plus the frustration from the other project, I'm like, I'm out. Time to figure out how to get back to either New York or go out to San Francisco, one or the other, and like find my way into startups.
That's cool. That's you definitely saw an opportunity there, because that's a huge pain point when all the execs from both companies are trying to merge, and
Yeah.
it could be their last moment with the company.
Yeah.
That's kind
It's
of
like a
scary.
double or nothing career move there. If it goes through, it's super high, but if it doesn't, like that's it.
Totally, totally. Cool. Thank you for sharing. So then, at Kaplan, you're talking about CD-ROMs and all of that.
Hmm.
So, um, and which was very analog, and so
Yep.
it sounded like you were part of the progression to go more digital. What did you learn about that moving portion of trying to move stuff from analog
Mm.
to digital?
Yeah, so I would just I would never contradict my host. So let me just say, let me add some color to that.
Yes.
The classroom is super analog. The
Hmm.
CD-ROM is technically digital, right? But it's
True.
a flat experience, right? It's a very linear,
Hmm.
flat experience, and also it's a very kind of like it's basically a book, maybe a choose your own adventure type book,
Hmm.
but it doesn't even scratch the surface of even back then what you could do with a website and the interactivity. And more
Hmm.
importantly, they were seeing all these other startups come in from different directions, and they knew like, hey, we charge like $2,000 for this whole in classroom experience, and we charge like $35 for the CD-ROM. Intuitively, there has to be some kind of a hybrid experience around the web, which falls in between the two.
Hmm.
Whether it's 400 bucks or $800, we don't know yet, but it's got to be something. So I've never been happiest in my life. I'm never happier in my life than when I'm given a blank sheet of paper and said, make something. Right? I love that. So they basically said, like, listen, we don't know what goes in the middle here. So come up with something. How does this work? Right? What are the pieces of it that are live, or what are the pieces that are interactive with a human? What are the pieces that are programmatic? So starting with the GMAT, ironically, we migrated that into a web product, and then we kind of expanded that to come out with a strategy for all their other products. And then I found a startup, and I'm like, hey guys, it's been great. You can take this from here.
Cool. Cool. Yeah. Awesome. Very interesting. And then, which founder muscle did you build as a CEO, COO that you still rely on today?
I mean, like all of them. Again, like if you're doing things, it's not like any muscles are ever totally idle. I'll tell you the ones that were overdeveloped that I had to pare back. How's that?
Okay.
So as a consultant, uh, you come into a lot of situations of unnecessary complexity, and it causes the business to underperform. Right? It could be a merger of two companies; they're all slightly different, and you have to kind of harmonize how they do it. It could just be something that's grown over time with no discipline, and you need to like come up with like this is the best practice.
Mhm.
But you're so trained to say like, hey, how do we optimize this? How do we simplify it? Well, sometimes make it more complex and optimize it, but usually, like, how do we come up with a rational way to do this? uh, and I still remember very, very, very vividly. We had one sales guy that would go out there, and like every deal he cut was different, right? I was like, well, it's like $5 per camper for this camp, and it's like 495 for this one, and it's 498 for that one. I'm like, Ed, man, you drive me nuts. Just pick one, right?
Mhm.
You don't need three plans ever so slightly different by a couple of pennies. And it was really getting to be a bone of contention. And the CEO kind of pulled me into his office and like, closed the door. And he says, like, you don't get it. At this stage in the company, we just have to say yes. We need the customers and we need the revenue. I didn't put it quite this way, but the revenue, while it was important, the customer part was even more important, because we actually need them in there to tell us what they liked, what they didn't like. We
Totally.
needed them to be our testimonials for future customers. We needed them to give us that kind of economies of scale or scope that we were going to get. Like we needed that. And if we were going to be unnecessarily complex, that was a price we needed to be willing to pay. So that kind of reset things. It's like, no, like you got to stop that. I got to let that muscle lie dormant for a bit and just
Mhm.
kind of embrace the mess long
Mhm.
enough to just absorb what the market was saying to us.
Definitely. Yeah, that's quite interesting. And it totally makes sense because you want to be able to figure out exactly and get all the data points that you can get from your customer because they're ultimately the one that's using it, right? And
Hmm.
so you need to make it a little bit better. Um, what operating habit proved most transferable when you began investing?
Good question. Think of it like a concentric circle, right?
Okay.
The skills that make you a good entrepreneur are a subset of what make you a good investor in my mind. Now,
Hmm.
there are people who can be good investors without some of it. Like, it's like, you can get to where you want to go in a lot of different ways. But for me, they're a subset. So to be able to look at the startup like an entrepreneur and see its potential and how it has to develop, like that's part of me assessing it as a business. But then you have to layer on top of it the skills that help you decide, what do you think of it as an investment? And then you have to layer, in front of that, how do you actually get those companies into your pipeline?
Hmm.
It's one thing to build one business. It's another thing to source like 100 of them so you can make, 20 investments, or 400 of them to make 20 investments. It's
Hmm.
another thing entirely when I was running an accelerator to source over 1,000 startups in a period of 2 months
Oh
to pick
wow.
10 of them.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's aggressive.
Yeah. So you need to source them. You need to filter them fast. You got it because you can't look at all 1,000 of them. You got to filter them fast. You got to
Totally.
figure out a way of the ones that make that past that first filter, how to actually do a deeper dive and diligence them. At some
Hmm.
points, you got to figure out how to sell it, right? The best startups have their choice of who they want on their cap table. So you have to sell yourself. You have to sell your money to them.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, you have to be able to support them, as an ongoing basis.
Definitely. Yeah. And that's why I've also noticed is it just seems like so many VCs were previously entrepreneurs, startups themselves, and then they just circle back. And it's just one thing that I've always noticed with entrepreneurs in general is they love helping other entrepreneurs to learn and grow and start and support them, which is
It
just
didn't
really,
used
really
to be
cool.
that way.
Oh,
It didn't
really?
used to be that way. When we started, most investors, most VCs I know did not come from the operating world. There just weren't that many of them, right? They came from more of a finance background. And
Mm,
some of them were really, really good at what they did. But again, they didn't come from that background. And I don't know if it's because the founder turned investor is better at being an investor, or if having that kind of thing in common with the founders that they're trying to talk to gives them a leg up on convincing them to take their money. I don't know which of these elements is at play here, but it's gotten to the point where if you meet someone who is in VC and they haven't done a startup before, it's almost like, oh, I haven't seen that in a while.
hmm. Interesting. And I'm almost curious too because we had, .com and then we've also had, apps, right? Smartphones.
Mhm.
So there's been a lot of exits that have occurred. So there's been a lot of founders who have been able to have multiple companies that they've exited and then they're
Mhm.
just at that point where they're just kind of done starting up and so they're going to start up through someone essentially, which
Yeah.
is just kind of interesting. Technology, right, bringing us together and changing paths and everything, which is kind of interesting. But let's talk about your accelerator and investing playbook. So
Mhm.
why join Dream It and why the ed tech urban tech pivot?
Oh, yeah, sure. So I used to joke around that. So let me roll back. So like, let's set the stage. So I'm at Bunk One, the startup,
Hmm.
2005, 2006. I'm starting to think about, can we sell the company, or if we don't sell, what's my exit there? And I start to make a couple of angel investments. The first one through a friend of mine. I'm still friends with him. He now runs Hyde Park Venture Partners. It was one that I had zero rational reason for doing. It was a pharmaceutical compound. I don't know that market.
Hmm.
I don't know anything about it. I just got lucky. And it did
Mm.
well. So like, it's like you go to Vegas, you put money down on like, 17 at the roulette table, and like you win,
Yep.
like you're hooked. And intellectually, like there's like zero skill involved there. But you're still hooked.
Yeah.
So I made a couple of more, and my second one was actually pretty good. It was my college roommate who I'd also gone to high school with. and he was starting a health tech startup. At least that was, more software, and that did well too. So I'm like, oh, that's awesome. And then I made a couple of that didn't do quite as well, but I was already starting to get into that space, and I started to think like, man, if I could spend all day at a coffee shop just talking to entrepreneurs and get paid for that, that would be awesome. And that's basically, in a nutshell, how I saw, running an accelerator. Now, there are parts of it that are like that. There's a
Hmm.
lot that are very much not like that, but that was partially what drew me to it. And that was also a period of time, like, um, the same way, like leaving consulting before I got to startup, there's like a little bit of a wandering in a desert. In this case, Kaplan, right?
Hmm.
Not where I was ultimately going to be, but it was an area of transition. From when I left Bunk One in 2008 until I got to Dream in 2014, I'd worked at a family office for a couple of years in between. And, that's a totally different experience. Made sense at the time. It was very stressful. Also, it definitely wasn't what I wanted to be. But that was, kind of my wandering in the desert from going from an entrepreneur to starting to become some kind of more institutional style investor. And I make a distinction between angel and VCs or accelerator because it's a step level of activity higher. Right, as an angel, if you get a couple of 3 or 4 interesting startups over across my desk any month, I'm like, I'm not going to invest in any of them this month, or I'll invest in one. Like, that's good. You're happy.
Mm.
But when you have to start thinking about constructing a portfolio for a VC, where you've got 3 years to deploy your first investments into startups, you want to do
Hmm.
maybe 30 or 40 investments. And you got to start thinking like the pacing, and do I reserve money for later? Do I like this part of the cycle? It's a different level. It's like going from checkers to chess, to use the analogy you
Mm.
had before.
Yeah.
And to do it like with an accelerator where you're trying to get like those huge numbers together to get a cohort of startups all ready to start at the same time.
Hmm.
That's like the guy in Washington Square Park who goes from chess table to chess table and is playing like 8 games at once. It's like a different level.
Totally.
So yeah, it's a step level difference from just being an angel to being a professional VC or running an accelerator.
Hmm. Yeah. That completely makes sense to me now. Quite interesting. What are the most common mistakes you see in an accelerator application?
Ooh, let's break them into categories, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Let's
Let's
do it.
let's break them into like, oh, they screwed up and don't know it, which are kind of funny, versus like just kind of clueless mistakes, right? So
Mm.
you want to start with the like you screwed up, or the no, you didn't know any better. Pick a category.
Uh-huh.
Which one do you want to start with?
Let's go with didn't know any better.
Okay, so there's lots of like we have no competition, right? That's the guy. Like, everyone's like, no, there's no competition. Okay, so let's just say it was like Uber. Oh, we have no competition. So people are just sitting around in their living rooms all day and they can't go anywhere. It's like, well, no. I mean, they can take a cab, or they can walk, or they can take a bus, or they can pick up the phone instead of going. Right?
Hmm.
Somehow the underlying basic need is being met. Now, to the
Yes.
extent that like if you're Uber, there's no Lyft yet. That's awesome. It means that you have a step level improvement over the status quo. But I need
Hmm.
to know what the status quo is, because how much of an improvement you are. Because people
Hmm.
don't change for like a little bit. They only change if it's a quantum level better.
Totally.
So we have no competition. That's like the classic newbie error.
Got it. And then the other one, the full on mistake.
Oh,
Um,
there's a lot of them, but lack of attention to detail. Like, so, we'd say, okay, optionally upload like a, 90-second video, introducing yourself and your team. By the way, there's like some people love video and some people hate video,
hmm.
right? Some people love video because it's like, they can kind of sit back and receive it. Other people are like, I'm forced to watch this in a linear fashion. I can't just scan it and jump around to what I need to know.
Got it.
I'm, you can analyze this any way you want, but I'm kind of I'd rather have it in writing so I can jump around.
Hmm.
But we said like, hey, I want to upload a video. Give us good 90 seconds is good. You can kind of get a feel for the team a little bit. Um, and some of them would upload the files, and it would be Techstars team video.
Techstars Team Video?
Yeah, like because they'd use the same file that they applied to like Techstars for Dream It and to Y Combinator, and like
Ah,
not realizing that we could see the file name.
got it, got it, got it. Just
Yeah,
that little tiny, tiny detail that
yeah.
that okay, got it,
So
got
there's a
it.
whole bunch of
That
little
makes sense.
things like that are like your fly's open.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We,
Totally.
actually, I wouldn't have dinged a company for that. I would mostly use that to tease them mercilessly if we took them.
Oh, you remember that one time?
Yeah, it's
That's
like, oh,
hilarious.
you got the deck. Don't write Techstars in it.
That's really funny. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And then what are your must-have signals in a pre-seed or a seed founder? And
Okay. Personality wise for the founder or characteristic of the startup?
let's go both angles.
Ooh, I love it. Either or, and you get both. Okay, so you get twice the monologues. Let's start with the founder. Right.
Hmm.
Number one, I want this kind of mental mindset. And this is not my quote. I wish I could remember who gave me this quote. So I'd love to give him credit for it. But founders should have well reasoned but loosely held opinions.
Mm,
So the idea there is, you got some founders like whoever they walk out of a meeting with last, like boom, like a weather vane. That's what they think. That's
hmm.
no good. Right. And then there are others where it's like it doesn't matter what anyone tells them, it doesn't matter how good the arguments are, they're gonna do what they're gonna do.
They're just gonna do that. Like,
Yeah.
can't get anything towards their head.
Yeah, it's like it's like a weather vane, but it's stuck in it's like rusted in one direction. So
Totally.
there's a happy medium between the two, where if I ask, hey, Colin, why are you doing this? You have a good reason. I ask, well,
Hmm.
actually, that's interesting. Are you aware of that? And I'll give you a fact that you don't know. And I'm
Hmm.
like, well, that's interesting. I didn't know that. Um, I'm gonna go look into it, and can I look into it and come back to you? Like that's a
Hmm.
totally reasonable and good response. Is what you're saying is this is data I didn't have before. You're giving me
Hmm.
data. That's awesome, right? If that data changes the analysis, I'm gonna follow the data. Right? I like that, right? But you're not
Hmm.
going to change your mind unless like I give you good data. It's like, well, I think you should X, Y, Z. You're like, well, that's interesting. What's the logic behind it? You can ask that
Hmm.
respectfully. Any investor who's like, no, just take my advice. They're full of it. Don't. But founders should be, an investor should be happy to show you his or her work. So that's
Definitely.
the main characters. There are others, but that's the biggest one. And in fact, like, uh, well, we can get to the book later. So the other question was like the number one underlying characteristic of the startup. So
Hmm.
when you're looking at 1,000 startups in a 2 month period, the number one question I will ask, and I will ding almost like summary judgment anyone where I don't feel like I have a good answer for it, is why now? Because
Hmm.
ironically, there's never a page in the pitch deck for this. It should be implicit in the problem and the solution. But the question is why now? And the
Hmm.
reason is this: there are a lot of hungry entrepreneurs out there, a lot of them. And a lot of those entrepreneurs are actually really smart. There's some dumb ones and a lot of dumb ones and some quirky ones and some clueless ones. And the, oh my God, what are you thinking ones? But, there's a good chunk of them that are actually pretty sharp and they know what they're doing, or if they don't know what they're doing, they learn fast. So if you have that many people and they're all kind of standing around waiting for a door open, waiting for an opportunity to happen, and then boom, it becomes possible. And that could be a technological change, that could be a regulatory change, it could be, for very rare occasions, like a massive societal change like COVID, right?
Hmm.
Like,
Totally.
but once something changes in a step level way, a big one, not a gradual way, and all of a sudden
Hmm.
there's new opportunities out there, they will all start playing with it. What can I do with this? Oh my God, I can finally solve that problem that we couldn't solve before. And
Hmm.
they'll all rush at it. And many of them will end up coming up with fairly similar solutions just
Hmm.
by virtue of parallel evolution. It's like sharks and dolphins look kind of the same, even though one's a fish and one's a mammal. Right? But that's a
Uh-huh.
good solution to getting through the ocean. So you'll
Hmm.
get a bunch of startups that come up with very similar looking solutions. They're all kind of thinking that the other guys have stolen their idea, but it's really not. I mean, they've all kind of come to the same place. Now, the corollary to this is if that door's been open for a couple of years already,
Hmm.
and now you're coming to the party, do you really think no one's gone through that door yet? And
Mhm.
there are dozens or hundreds of guys that have gone through that door already. So one of two things is true. Either there are people out there and they're ahead of you, right? And you're late to that party.
Mhm.
Or, they tried it every which way but Sunday. And it turns out it's actually not there yet, or it's not a pain point that's suitably painful, or the tech isn't quite there yet, or whatever the case is, it's not a viable like startup because you've had so many people try it in so many different ways. On very, very rare occasions, maybe nobody thought of it, but that's a really hard argument to make.
Mhm.
So, as a good rule of thumb, when you need to get down from 1,000 startups, like 50 that you want to interview, like you look for a why now. And if you can't find a why now in the recent past, um, it's probably not a great one.
Mhm. Hmm. Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And it was absolutely so crazy because I was at Money 2020 in Vegas, fintech conference last week,
Mm-hmm.
and it was just an ungodly amount of agentic AI companies, just a boatload of them. I'm just like mind boggled at how many agents, uh, AI agents there are that are just out there, and then just discovering them
Well,
constantly. And it's
that
like
was a step level change. It wasn't something that was possible before. I will say
totally.
that like a lot of that is just BS, right? So like every time like new tech comes, people like they sprinkle the new tech on their startup like fairy dust. It's
Hmm.
like, oh, we use blockchain. Why? Oh, because it's
Yeah.
blockchain, right? No, but like a centralized ledger is fine and it's faster, but it's blockchain, right? And then it's like we use AI. I'm like, no, you don't. It's a SQL query. And then like of course like AI is not enough. It has to be agentic AI. So
Yeah.
I was talking with a CTO of a different startup after a conference. We were joking about that. And I'm like, and half the guys, like, if you ask them to define agentic AI, they don't know what they're talking about. And at the exact moment, another guy walks up and he pitches me on a startup. It's agentic AI. So I kind of look at the other guy and go, watch this. Say, how would you define agentic AI versus a regular AI? He's like,
Uh
well, and then he like mumbles something out. And I'm like, yeah, he goes, no. Right.
huh.
So like a good chunk of it is just, startup fairy dust. But
Hmm.
enough of it's reals. Enough of it's for reals. And it's an exciting time to be alive.
Oh yeah, I mean the AI revolution is just it's so impactful, and there's just so much speed. Like I was able to even make my platform in the matter of 2 weeks with $40 using Lovable when I just cut off
Nice.
a
Yeah,
hundred.
I want to play with
I,
Lovable. I haven't done that yet.
oh,
The vibe
it's so
coding
much
stuff
fun.
is totally different. Yeah.
Oh, it's so cool, Andrew. You have to play with it. I was also at a networking event, and there was a younger gentleman, and he was like, "I want to create a financial advice platform." Blah blah blah. I pull up my phone. I type in what he wants.
Hmm.
It spins it, and then it spun it up, and he's just like, "What?" I'm like, "Yes, there
He's
you
like, there you
go."
go. By the way, it's mine now. You want to pay me royalties. Uh,
Exactly.
yeah, no, there are a bunch of stuff. So, first of all, interesting. The first time One of the first times I've actually seen people deploy Lovable, not just as like a one-off, but as a way to change an entire organization. I'm going to give a shout out to Seth at EXP Realty. They actually gave all of their employees Lovable accounts, and they have monthly contests. I think $1,000, $2,000 prize. Whoever comes up with like the coolest little like mini program let that makes people's lives better, which I think is great. Like one of the things that like people are talking about vibe coding is that it's going to affect in many respects like the kind of tasks that are just too small for you to ever go to IT for,
Hmm.
and then just didn't get done before. So there's a whole bunch of cool stuff you can do that way, and they deployed it company wide. So I got to give them props.
That's really cool. That's a really smart way of doing a contest because you don't know what will come out of it for your product at the end of the
Yeah, and
day.
it's $1,000 a month, and you got a lot of shots on goal, and people
Hmm.
enjoy it. I mean, the
Yeah.
people who don't enjoy it, well, that tells you something about them, and maybe they're not maybe they're not a great fit for a learning organization.
Totally. Too funny. Yeah, I'm definitely a creative person, so I love I want more creatives around me and thinking, what if, kind of thing. So, a time you changed your mind about a team or a market and why?
Ooh, in a good way or a bad way?
Eh,
I've had a
I don't
lot
know.
of times where I thought they were great and I was wrong.
Yeah, let's start there. And then we'll maybe go to like a market. Maybe you were like
Sure.
super focused on a market, and then you're like, never mind.
Okay. Yeah. So let's take it like that. So, um, we talked a little about the jockey and the horse, right? So it's like
Yep.
sometimes, I go in there and we had this rubric where, we have like, what's the strength of the idea and the strength of the solution to that? Is it a big, painful problem? Is it a great solution to the problem? How big is the market? How much traction they have and how awesome is the team? Simple stuff like that when we were doing kind of a quick scoring on startups. So I had this one startup. The idea, it was super painful. The problem was super painful. The solution was like big. It was like big, hairy, audacious, like impressive. Um, I had these misgivings around the founder. He kind of heard what he wanted to hear. Everyone's being polite when they're applying for something,
Hmm.
but he had a little bit of like a chip on his shoulder. But I said, you know what? Like he's got something really big. No one's perfect. And like there's a baseball player from my youth, Reggie Jackson. They said, "Why are you such a braggart?" And he's like, "Well, I ain't bragging if you can do it." Okay, maybe you can do it, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Uh, and then ultimately, it turned into a train wreck, right? He went out there and not for what the reasons you might think, right? So
Okay.
our model at that time, we did iterate it on a couple of models, but our model at the time was, after working with the startups for a period of time and introducing to a bunch of customers and investors, when they had a lead investor, that would trigger our option to invest in the startup. Now, it was pretty rare if a company got, good VC leading the round where we wouldn't exercise the option because in that case, like, why did we do all of this, right?
Hmm.
Like we had to be at a point where like maybe we learned something along the way that bothered us, or maybe we thought like that was a crazy investor and the valuation was way too high.
Hmm.
So this particular company had it was raising money in the UK and they had like early forms of equity crowdfunding. And he's like, they want to hear from one of our investors. I'm like, well, technically we have a little bit of equity in our, our advisor equity, but we have the right to invest. I just want to be very clear, where we are on it, that we have every intention of investing. That's why we do this, but we're
Hmm.
not yet an investor. It's like, oh, yeah, that's fine, 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 fine. So I get up there, we're talking about it. I answer questions like that. And then he comes out like, you didn't tell them that you're an investor. I told them you were all an investor, and now they think I lied to them, and like the round's falling apart. And I'm like, well, dude, like I told you explicitly, right? This is
Hmm.
what I have to say. Like, who told you to tell them that you're? Well, you told me you were investing. I'm like, I did not. Right? Look through all your emails. Right? We're very careful about it. Well, you so told me you misspoke. And I said, dude, I do this 17 times a week when I talk to startups. It's pure muscle memory. There's
Hmm.
no way. And look at your emails. But he was the kind of guy that heard what he wanted to hear. And I came up later, like we keep seeing stuff later on. I'm like, oh, he's still being him. So I've learned it's not a question of like, what's the weighted average of these, 5 factors. It's more like a chain. It's a chain in that any link, if it's broken, the startup is broken.
Hmm.
It doesn't matter how strong the other 4 links are. If one of them's weak, you got nothing. So I've come around full circle on that
Wow. Wow. Yeah. That that definitely makes sense. And then, what about the market? Was there a market that you're super interested in, and then was took a
So
step
yeah,
back?
so I'll tell you. So we went, for the first 2 years that I was with Dream It, we were kind of the archetypical pre-seed accelerator. I mean, we'd invented that market. We're the third oldest accelerator in the world at that point. So it was like your archetypical come, sit your butts in a chair for like 3 months. We'll bring you speakers, pizza, beer, and then demo day. Somewhere around after my 2 year mark, I was like, yeah, okay, I'm ready to move on. That's nice. It's been a good stepping stone. And then the gentleman that I mentioned earlier, Avi Savar, ended up taking over the reins of Dream It. And he's like, this is fine, but could we be number one doing this? I'm like, Y Combinator is pretty far ahead. And I
Hmm.
said, well, if we don't think we can be number one at this, I don't want to be in this space. Find me a space where we can be number one.
Mm.
So we made a very purposeful decision to go one step later stage, you know, post revenue, pre Series A, rather than like your pre seed type startups.
Mhm.
And in doing so, we decided to go vertically focused because if you're doing, later stage, like the customer introductions matter that much more. And if you're doing that kind of business development, it's just easier to do that around a single customer base. And along comes Penn State and gives us $1 million. There's a story behind it, but that's not important. And remember, I said I love getting a blank piece of paper. So Avi looks around the room and says, "Andrew, you haven't started recruiting for the New York cohort. This thing that we talked about doing, we have money to do it now. Why don't you build that?" I'm like, well, that's kind of cool. I'll build that.
Mhm.
But what I was worried about was like ed tech. I'm going to be bored to tears, right? I was a generalist. I could do anything I want. Ed tech, it's going to be like 17 different variations on how to teach calculus. Uh, Listen, I was worried about it, like legit, but like, the opportunity to create like the platform that was different was pretty exciting. But it turned out that like once you peel that top layer, you know, and then you look in there, there's like a wealth of depth within the verticals, right? So if you're the kind of person who just loves going under the hood and like loves getting into the mind of the customer, like there's a richness in I believe in virtually every industry. It just
Mhm.
looks kind of flat from the outside, but I fell
Mm.
in love with it. And then when we ended up selling urban tech, the prop tech and construction tech, like I really try to be able to do both at once, but it just wasn't, like we said before, there's only one of me. You run up against the calendar.
Yep. Hmm. Very interesting. Thank you for sharing all of those. Really appreciate that. Um, One underused accelerator resource founders ignore, and maybe they should pay attention to a little bit more.
Um, that's a good question, right? So, you know, being an ex-consultant, like I like to give everything names with the same first letter of the alphabet. So there are basically four things any accelerator needs to do. They need to help a startup get capital, customers, they need to coach, they need to have a community.
Hmm.
Now, uh, it's actually, I mean, it's hard to do them all, but it's actually relatively simple. There's a saying: there are things that are hard but not complicated, and things that are complicated but not hard, and there are things that are hard and complicated. So introducing startups to investors is hard but not overly complicated at the end of the day, right? You know what the startup does. You know what the investors do. If you're smart, you only bring the right startups, the right investors, then you hope magic happens. Doesn't always, right? It's like dating. Hey, really nice
Hmm.
person, but not for me.
Yep.
So the capital side is, I won't say it's the easy part, but it's the conceptually easy part. Next along comes the coaching, right? Because you can bring people who are ex-entrepreneurs, maybe they've had some funding success, so they can coach the startups pretty well. In fact, maybe the
Hmm.
coaching is easier for some than the capital side. But that's pretty easy to do. You can't really market yourself differently based on that, because everyone claims to be like really good at giving advice.
Hmm.
Now, where the accelerators start falling apart and where a startup should think really carefully about choosing their accelerator, which, by the way, I put a whole chapter on in my book, in a very creative way, I might add, uh, is the other two features. So how do you assess the customers, and especially when you're a later stage accelerator like we had become, getting from like 0 to 1, okay, you get one or two customers, they're referenceable, it's a big point. But if you're a company that's coming in with a couple $100,000 in revenue and you want to get $1 or $2 million AR to raise your A round, that's a different ball game.
Hmm.
So we had to think really carefully about how we did those customer introductions, how we developed those. So, advice number one is to a founder coming in is like, you can talk about how many people get funded, and you can like look at the bios of the people. You have anyone who's doing startups like I did, how well do you gel with them? But dig deep into that customer. How do you do the customer introductions? Is it just like, well, we look through our Rolodexes, or is there a process to it? Right.
Mm.
And like politely call bullshit, right? Like, well, we have this whole process. Which, tell me how it works, right? How is it different from my startup versus like another startup that does something else?
Hmm.
Respectfully probe there, because there's a vast differences between how good people are at the customer introductions. And the last piece is the community. And I will say probably across the board, accelerators don't do that as well as they could, but it's really freaking hard. Like
Hmm.
it's easy to create a sense of like we're all in this together for like the 8 or 10 companies that are in your program at one point in time, right? Band of brothers type stuff. It works. How do you
Yep.
create that same level of community across different cohorts? Hey, they went
Hmm.
through New York. They went through, Austin, right? I don't know each other from Adam. Or these guys went through New York. These guys went through New York 2 years ago. They can help them a lot with customer. They could make customer introductions for each other,
Totally. Totally.
but they don't know each other. And if they do, they
Yeah.
don't have that same kind of like, who is this guy? I don't want to put my street cred on the line. So accessing the community in a very effective way is tough. So the same way you have that portco jujitsu where like you want to get to an investor, go for the portfolio companies. I would say that if you're a startup going into the accelerator, really, really, really use that time you're there, and when you're done, to meet as many of the other portfolio companies who are even remotely in your field as possible.
Hmm.
Right? Pay it forward, do what you can. Like, sometimes there are resources that you can access when you're in program that they can't when they're out of the program. Offer to help them out, whatever it is to build those ties, uh, because that's one of those hidden resources in the good programs that most people don't take advantage of because the programs themselves aren't set up to take advantage of them very well.
Totally. So, I'm kind of curious with your accelerator program. How do you combat that yourself? Then, do you do like
So
invitations for everyone that's been in the accelerator for a meetup, or?
yeah, so it's been a bunch of years, but I'll tell you some of the things that we did, right? So first of all, when we went from, you sit your butt in a chair for 3 months to later stage, we had to go mostly remote. A guy that's running a 10 to 20 person startup is not going to bring his entire team into
Hmm.
like New York or Baltimore or wherever to
Totally.
sit down, right? It doesn't work that way. So we had two tent poles. Well, we had the kickoff, and then we had like 2 weeks of customer sprints in the middle and 2 weeks of investor sprints at the end. Those were in person. The rest were virtual. So recreating that sense of camaraderie within the cohort itself was actually hard. We had to work backwards to get to where we were before. So, and I had this grand vision that like I would want the startups to refer business to each other, right? Or to refer like investors or customers,
Hmm.
uh, and I tried to do it on the top down and failed miserably. I mean, everything else worked, but I failed to get that to bear any fruit. And then a year or two in, I stumbled on by total chance the key, or at least the key for that cohort.
Hmm.
So while we were going, we go to different cities to do these introductions. I kind of says, "Hey guys, just split Ubers, right? Save yourself some money." So they would come, they'd be going to and from these customer pitches and investor pitches together. So it was just natural for them to say, "Oh, who are you meeting with? Oh, I'm meeting with them too. What do you know?" Right? And then by accident, the master stroke. So normally during the investor pitches and the customer pitches, the startups would come into the room. All the other startups that weren't pitching yet, but that were coming to that particular customer, would sit in like outside.
Hmm.
So one of the spaces we went to, it just wasn't set up that way. So we all went into the room together, and the startups weren't presenting, just kind of leaned back and watched. Uh, and what they got was they got to see their peers pitching and to see how the customers responded to it, how they leaned into it, what they liked about it.
Hmm.
And it was like, oh my God, that's legit. They're actually solving a painful problem too. So like they kind of bonded over that because they now realize that like I can put this guy in front of my customers without it embarrassing me. So that actually got us there. Now, how do I do that across different cohorts? I'm not there yet,
Hmm.
but I'm actually working on it as we speak. Right. So in the background behind Riverside FM that we're using to record it is
Yep.
my window with ChatGPT, and I'm trying to do a kind of Wizard of Oz prototype of a tool that would enable portfolio companies within the same accelerator to ask each other for introductions, either to investors or customers, um, in a way that makes sense, right? So like,
Mhm.
you know, you may be 3 years ahead of me. You know, I don't want you to be as the accelerator. I don't want you to be deluged by startups that aren't ready for the caliber of introduction you can make. But on the other hand, I want them to be able to ask when they're ready.
Totally.
And I don't want you to feel like I've just like opened you up to spam and put a target on your back.
Mhm.
So there's a way to do it where the requesting startup provides certain information to you, uh, in a way that kind of gives you a little bit of like comfort that like, hey, these guys are kind of ready. They're worth talking to. And then if you accept it, then you make the connection. You can talk and then make the connection to the customer along the way. But you got to look at it from all angles so that the companies that receive it are willing to do it. It reflects well on them if they make the intro, and they also get value out of it.
Mhm.
So I'm
Mhm.
trying to figure out if I can make that work. Um, it may not be enough, right? It may be like we get it, like I don't know these guys. I'm not going to risk it. Delete, but we'll see. Like it's something that even all these years later, I'm still working on doing better.
Yeah. It's almost like Tinder for introductions for the accelerator.
I would like to think they're a little bit more, actually, more like eHarmony, right? Because it's like
Ah,
we want to take a
yeah.
lot of factors in. It's not just look and swipe.
Yep.
We want to put a lot of thought into that matching algo.
Totally. Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see you solve that problem. I think that's a big problem.
From your mouth to God's ears.
Yeah, yeah. Very cool. Well, so we're over to our fun fact about AI investment. So analysts say that AI spending is still accelerating, which it currently is by Gartner pegs. $1.5 trillion in 2025, projected to go to 2 trillion in 2026. Um, AI is on track to capture over half of all venture funding for the year. Do you think so? There's also huge talk about we're in an AI bubble. We're in an AI bubble.
Mhm.
You've obviously lived through the dot com bubble. Do you think AI is a bubble right now, and where are we in that cycle, or what's your perspective?
Yeah, so let's take this apart piece by piece. So half of all
Definitely.
VC spends are in AI. Well, gee, every startup we get pitched says AI in it. So like, or it's robotics, right? But then actually
Yep,
robots are using AI for vision, they're using for AI. They just don't call
totally.
themselves an AI startup, they call it robotics. So part of that's definition, right? But part of it's also very real, but it varies stage wise, right? So uh, the big rounds at the end, when you're looking at it dollar wise, skew everything. And the rounds for AI are just epic in size.
Hmm.
And they are, it makes sense. Like these once in a generation land grabs, I get them. People are afraid if they're not in it, they're not going to get anything. But then, of course, there's a little of a winner's curse there, like you can overpay. So there is,
Hmm.
to the extent that there's a bubble in that the money that a VC will put in there will never return, or it's unlikely to return what they needed to return because they're overpaying to get in. There's some truth to that. There may be, right? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe everything will like pay off even more than people want to, but there's definitely a lot of FOMO there. There's definitely a lot of froth. I think there's going to be a vast number of VCs that underperform because they just picked the wrong horse.
Mm,
Uh, Now, are we in a bubble as far as a customer or startup is concerned? I mean, no. I mean, we're living it. The tools are being built, right? It doesn't matter if as an investment it underperforms because the valuation was too high when the VC came in. At the end of the day, if the customers get new tools to play with, life is good, right?
totally.
So we're in a happy place. We're going to get better and better toys. So I wouldn't worry about that as a consumer.
Hmm. Totally.
That's all good. I
Yeah.
mean,
I
until the AI overlords decide that they're going to crack the whip.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm loving all the different tools because I'm constantly talking to people and exploring their own product. I'm reaching out to other startups with their products, and it's just so crazy all the different applications that AI can be used in such a unique and perspective way,
Yeah.
other than angenic.
Yeah. No, no. Listen, I'll play with that too. I don't know about you, right? But I'm the kind of guy that learns by doing.
Hmm.
Some people can take
Me too.
courses. Do you remember it was a startup called Code Academy? Do you remember them?
Yes.
Yeah. So when I was between my second startup and whatever I did after that, I had a period of time where I couldn't really talk about what I was doing. So I did I'm like, you know what? I already taught myself SQL. Let's teach myself a little bit more HTML and CSS. So I do it, and at the end, I'm like, I don't really know if I learned anything. It was too guided. So as a just like self-imposed graduation exercise, I'm like, coming up when I was younger, all computers came. They were PCs. They all came with this game called Minesweeper. So I'm like,
Hmm.
I could probably program that in JavaScript. Um, yeah, all client side. So I just set that as my own, like, I'm going to go recreate that on my own. And that proved to me that I actually learned what I was doing.
Mm.
So for some people, and for myself included, like, just I'm going to learn how to use AI and ChatGPT or Claude or Lovable or Perplexity. Like, it's just too much. You know where to start. So for me, it all starts with jotting down like use cases. Like, oh, I'm going to try to
Hmm.
do that. Like the other day, I'm like, oh, I have all these videos. I'm on these like podcast appearances, especially with the book out,
Yep.
and it's great. I can tweet it, but wouldn't it be cool if I could just take like that 45-minute video and just have an AI tool pick like 6 to 10 plus or minus second clips? I could use that. So like, okay, I'm gonna go down that rabbit hole and see what I can do. What I learned I can't do in ChatGPT, and apparently Gemini can't do it either.
It's
But
built into Riverside.
well, let's talk then after the show. But yeah, and there's a tool called Opus, which is actually a lot of podcasters use. I found out after suffering, uh, but I'm also trying to avoid having 20 different tools that I pay $20 a month for. It'd be nice
Same.
to have somewhere I can just kind of use them as is, or use one for several. I'd like to have a Swiss Army knife. But yeah, so that's how I learn. So I would say for like the people in the audience who, maybe they're not founders, maybe they're at their jobs and they have a real job, thinking about becoming a founder, maybe not, or even founders who are like, I got my core business, but I got to think about AI just so I can figure out like how it impacts me. The number one thing to do is just like keep a post-it with you or a virtual post-it on your phone. Every time you think about, oh, I think I could do that with AI, just jot it
Hmm.
down. Make a
Hmm.
list of like, exercises for yourself, and then just play with it. Like, you'll learn the hard way, but play with it.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah, I cannot agree enough. I started learning to code using ChatGPT while I was creating my platform. And then I was like, there has to be a little bit of an easier way. And I'm like, oh, Lovable. I've been hearing about Lovable. Let's try that. And then it
Yeah.
was just like magic. But of course, early technology, it started like changing code in areas that I didn't want it to. And then it got so big that I needed my technical co founder to come on board, which is a good
to
problem to
to
have.
clean up the spaghetti that you created.
Yes, exactly. Well, cool. One more question about AI and VCs. So, if VCs are pouring so much into AI, and I know you said that now AI is just like incorporated to every single startup, basically. But um, how do non AI startups compete in that world when there's not necessarily they're not a chatbot or an obvious AI first feature? Um, how could they differentiate themselves in these waters in such a way to make it
I got to
attractive
tell you, they
for?
started their pitch saying, "This is the only startup pitch you're going to see this month with no AI in it." Like, I would pay attention. Like,
Oh,
just
okay.
just for sheer like zigging where other people are zagging. Listen, I
Uh
don't
huh.
care. AI is a tool,
Yeah.
right? Blockchain is a tool.
Yep.
Right? Before that, like, just mobile phones were a tool, right? They're all
Yes.
just
Yep.
tools. And the question is, what's the right tool for the job? Just because like people have discovered a Phillips head screwdriver and it's pretty freaking awesome, doesn't mean the regular screwdriver isn't pretty damn good at other tasks,
Totally.
right? And hey,
Totally.
in some cases it's better because like the Phillips head will kind of you can strip the screw head, right? And it doesn't happen with the regular, I don't know what we call what's the regular screwdriver called? Just the minus sign screwdriver.
Oh,
So
the flathead, right?
flathead, thank you, thank you.
Yep.
Right, it's all about having the right tool for the job, uh, and at the end of the day, it always starts with what's the really painful, frequent, widespread problem that you're solving?
Hmm.
Are you solving it in a way that's a quantum level better? Awesome. If it includes AI to make that happen, okay, that makes sense. If AI doesn't make sense for it and you solved it a different way, power to you. I don't care.
Hmm. Cool, cool. Thank you for that advice. Because my startup is not AI focused. It's not AI driven. It's people focused. So, and
Okay.
everyone is just sprinkling in blockchain and stablecoin and AI and
Yeah, own
agentic
it. Own it.
AI. Totally
Right. Hey,
cool.
we're solving a crazy painful problem. Our solution is pretty awesome and it doesn't include AI or tokens.
Hmm.
Lean into it.
Yeah, totally. I like that. Kind of be the opposite. Like punk rock kind of thing.
Yeah.
So let's jump over to prop tech and contech and reach out labs really quickly. We have about a half an hour left, and I want to be able to get to our very last section as well.
Hmm.
For listeners that are listening, can you just quickly explain what prop tech and contech is?
Sure. Prop tech is short for property technology or real estate technologies. Anything that a real estate owner, developer, property manager, real estate agents, leasing offices, all the architects, anything that they would all be using. And construction tech is anything that goes into like the building of, right? So construction tech would also span developers and architects, but also include general contractors and subcontractors, material providers. It's kind of a blurry overlap between the two. Sometimes people will like say, "Oh, it's the built environment," and that includes almost all of them, except for real estate agents. I don't know. Everything in VC is kind of fuzzy that
Hmm.
way, but that's the general idea. And behind it, when you think about it, like construction and real estate, that's I think, the second biggest sector in the world economy behind financial services. When you think about the amount of VC money that goes into financial services relative to the
Hmm.
size of its sector, and you compare that to the amount of money that was going into prop tech and construction tech relative to the size of that sector, the prop tech and construction tech investment is an order of magnitude, several order of magnitudes smaller than it ought to be in the long run.
Yeah, yeah. It seems like it's so widely underserved, and at the same time, it's highly unregulated.
Well,
When
everything's unregulated.
True. When I was at the fintech conference, there was one startup that was buy now pay later for commercial space. So whoever is leasing the spot, they would always get their property paid for or their rent on time. And then the other one was
Oh, I
like,
think I actually know those.
oh really?
I met him in Vegas at Blueprint. Is
Ah,
it like
cool.
Flow? Something like Flow?
Yeah, yeah, I think it was Flow.
Yeah,
Small World. And then
yeah.
there's another one where it was basically like streamlining fintech for your general contractor or your service guy to come into your home and
Yeah.
trying to get
Listen,
them paid as quickly as possible.
you ever hear the phrase like software is eating the world? That's like the old, it was one of those old, like, oh, everything's going to be software now. I feel like fintech's sort of eating the world right now. Like even
Mm,
startups that are in other industries will sometimes have a fintech business model on top of
mm,
it. So for
mm-hmm,
example, I backed the company, it was called Rocket, right? They would haul like asphalt and gravel, things that are really heavy for low value add. They didn't haul it, but they created the software that the people who are shipping it, the people that are receiving it, and the people who are actually hauling it back and forth would use. In fact, I used to go to conferences with T-shirts that would say, like, "If you're not using Rocket, it's your own damn asphalt." Right? Good guys, love them.
hilarious.
Yeah. So, and a great company. Like the founders, it was like not their first rodeo by a long shot. They checked all the boxes. So great, and this is a good story, right? There's no but there. Um, the interesting part was, they started off and each one of those three use cases, the shipper, the receiver, and the hauler, all had like SaaS revenue attached to those modules. But then they like, oh wait, there's more. They were actually going to factor the receipt. So they knew like this is what the bill of lading said. This is what the actual invoice said. We know you're going to get paid, right? And the haulers are always like, they always need money faster. So they were going to actually like pay the holders in advance, knowing that they were going to get paid because they saw all this data. There was no uncertainty about it, and they'd make some good money on that float. And when we looked at
Hmm.
their total addressable market slide, no TAM, SAM, SOM, just TAM. Their TAM was actually like, this is our TAM from feature A, so sub TAM, feature module B, module C, and then the TAM from the financial services thing that they built on top of it was 5 times bigger than all the others. So you'll often find
Wow.
instead of just charging, I'm going to sell it. I'm going to, I'll sell it and I'll make money per unit, or I'll give you a subscription. I'll make money per month. You'll
Hmm.
often find really interesting fintechy uh, add-ons to monetize in ways that are more efficient and bigger opportunities than the underlying startup that's unlocking the opportunity.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. It was pretty wild. That was the first time that I went to a fintech conference, and it was just across the board, just so many different things
Mm-hmm.
um, in the convention center. How do you evaluate construction or real estate startups differently from classic SaaS?
So we'll expand that, right? So there are a lot of VCs that only do software. Right? They don't know
Hmm.
how to evaluate equipment for sure, or even hardware. Um, it's tough, right? So if it's something that's fairly simple, like I have here, hold on, I got it this way. So this is a company. It's called Smart Barrel.
Uh huh.
Um, what they do is they put these check-in kiosks at construction sites, and
Uh
there's
huh.
facial recognition, and it's like,
Uh
okay,
huh.
Andrew signed in at 9:02, right? So that's great. Goes right up into time roll and did the timekeeping, and they get paid to the
Hmm.
minute. There's no arguing. Well, I was there early. I was there late. No timestamp. You got a
Yep.
text when you showed up. So um, that piece of equipment is, I think, about $400 all in. So it's not a big deal, right? So for that, and it's
Hmm.
like $10 per worker per month, and the $400 up front, it pays for itself in like a
Yeah.
month or two. You could just eat it. You could roll it into the cost of setting up, but you just charge them for it, and it's not a big deal. So it's like kind of a setup
Totally.
fee, except it's a material setup fee.
Yep.
Then I don't have swag for this other one because it's a huge piece of equipment. It's like the size of like you know uh, what's a good it was like two John Deere lawnmowers, like set
Okay.
tail to nose. And in fact,
Uh
it
huh.
looks a little bit like the bastard child of like the Millennium Falcon and a John Deere lawnmower. And what it's done for is like instead of drilling into the ground to put fiber in and like these big 2 foot circular saws, kind of
Yeah.
pray to God there's no unmarked water mains or electrical conduits or gas mains, right? That would be bad.
Yeah.
And that happens all the time. And it's just slow and like risky. They'll take the fiber and they'll put it basically flat on the surface of the pavement and cover it with a resin, the same
Hmm.
kind of resin they use for road striping out in like Germany. And it's like 10 times cheaper, 10 times faster, no risk. But the piece of equipment that does this is like a $300,000 piece of equipment.
Oh wow.
And they are starting off right now, they perform or they self perform. And then they ultimately get to the point where they can rent the machines and sell the resin. And that's going to be their business model, like a razor and blade model, basically.
Got it.
Uh, but a lot of money's got to go into that equipment. So
Yes.
I look at it the same way to start with. Problem and solution. Are there is it really a huge opportunity? But then I think about its capital stack differently, right? Because it is such a large chunk. Like, does it make sense for them to finance those out of equity, right? You raise big rounds to make equipment, you have to maybe, or maybe if you're packaging these up and you're going to sell or rent the equipment and you just need money for like the 3-4 months it takes to build them, maybe you get like a line of credit. And that line of
Hmm.
credits, whenever you get a contract that fits within a certain set of criteria, you can go take that to the credit provider and say, hey, I got another one. Like, okay, here's
Easy.
$300,000, go build that machine. And then that means you're not raising that money out of equity, which for
Hmm.
an earlier stage investor means I have fewer people on top of me in the waterfall, more preference, get paid off before me.
Hmm.
So when I do stuff like that, I think a little differently about how I advise them when it comes to raising the money they need to raise.
Totally, totally. Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. Is like, don't burn through investor money just to build something. Um, like use that money wisely, right?
Yeah, and your debt. I mean, that if you can get it, that's great in a way because you're not selling pieces of your company.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, you're eliminating that dilution, and for your early investors, we'll be very happy with you with that. Well, let's jump over to the really fun part. Your book, the Entrepreneur's Odyssey. Thank you for sending this over. I really appreciate it. I'm already in
My
chapter
pleasure.
3. Everyone that's listening, definitely check it out. It's straight to the point, and kind of funny, and how he has written it. So can you tell me, like, this is your first book, right?
Technically, it's my second. The first book was a
Okay.
humor book I wrote 20 years ago, but let's
Okay.
just call this my first book.
Okay. So your first of the latest books.
Yeah,
Why did you write this book now, and what gap did you want to fill?
awesome. So, you asked me like one thing that came out of Hopkins that I remember. Like one of the main things that came out of Chicago Booth was a book called The Goal. Right. So The Goal was a novel about a guy that had to turn around a printing plant, but it was actually the textbook that we used for that class. So embedded within real life stories were things you needed to know about strategy and operations, and that concept just stuck with me for years. So the way I sometimes describe the book is it's kind of like Lean Startup meets The Alchemist. So it's a novel about a startup. It reads like a novel.
Mm-hmm.
There are characters, they're quirky, they have different voices. They go through life. The founder takes his kid to school in the morning on the subway. And like this, he's like, wow, subway, his son's like, wow, if I had the subway, I'd be rich. And what do you mean? It's like, I make tons of money. And then they start talking about like, well, the same $2.90 that we're paying to get you 4 stops to school, we could go all the way to Coney Island with. And the son's like,
Mm-hmm.
no way, Dad, that sucks. You got to pay more if you take more stops. So this evolves into a conversation about pricing models, like pay as you
Uh-huh.
go, all you can eat, freemium, even share of savings. But it's all embedded within that story, that conversation between the father and the son. It's not just two guys looking down at a pitch deck over a conference room table in WeWork. So,
Mm-hmm.
I took that concept from that earlier book that I'd read. So, what problem does it solve? Right? The problem is, and I hate to say this, is that most business books are deathly boring. Right? They just are. They're written by the same dude in the Midwest with the same earnest tone of voice, and it's anecdote, 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 name drop, name drop, name drop, and then 20, like at the end of each chapter, like a couple of bullet points or in a gray box near you with the key lessons. All you need to read are the key lessons at the end. Just rip out those end notes and you're good to go. So they're incredibly boring. And there's some good stuff out there, and like different podcasts, different types of blogs. But you got to assemble your own. And at
Mm-hmm.
the end of the day, stories are more memorable, right? Whenever I used to give advice to startups as running the accelerators, like, oh, well, Colin, you should do this. You're like, okay, that's interesting. But then when I say, hey, Colin, listen, this is other startup I invested in a few years ago that was in a similar state. Let me tell you what they did. And I'd walk
Mm-hmm.
you through that scenario. Like, this is how they solved it. Like, always, 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 that second way of telling it as a story that the founder could identify with was always more impactful, right? It always mattered more to them, always got them to make the changes they need to make. So instead of just writing this as a boring how-to guide, I wrote it as a novel, and I just embedded within that narrative the lessons in the hope that that makes it, you know, more accessible, more interesting, and more memorable.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. And even going and touching on that point of storytelling, I think it kind of takes us back to our childhood, and kind of taps into our inner child in such a way that it just is more memorable. And then just us being human, we love stories. Like, that's why movies are so popular, right? And then you get to
Oh,
dive into someone else's world.
I will see your childhood and raise you God. I'll tell you what I mean
Oh,
by that.
yeah.
There's not a single religious text that I know of that begins formatively saying these are the things you need to do.
Mm.
All religious texts begin with a story, usually the creation story. And then they follow patriarchs, usually patriarchs, I guess it could be a matriarch, but it's usually patriarchs, through
Mhm.
their lives. And embedded in the dilemmas that they faced are lessons for us to learn. Right. So I listen, this is not an original idea. Right. I stole it from the other book, and like, ultimately we're all stealing it from like the Bible or the equivalent. But
Mhm.
it's just a much more effective way to like really impart a lesson.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that a lot. That definitely makes sense.
Yeah, so I want to
So
see these right next to the Book of Mormon in all the hotel rooms from now on.
yes. Yeah, just imagine how many founders there would be.
Yeah, at every convention in Vegas.
Right? Right? So if a first-time founder is only able to read one chapter for whatever reason, which one would you recommend and why?
Okay, it depends what stage they're in. So let's start at
Mhm.
the beginning. If they're like, I'm gonna go out there, I want to build something, I got this great idea, I'm gonna start working on it.
Yeah, let's
I
say
would have
before
them,
fundraising.
yeah, I was way before it. When you're at the
Yep.
point where I have this idea, I'm gonna build something. Don't just do something, stand there. Right. So this chapter, you may have gotten up to it. The index card website. Did you read that part yet?
Not yet.
Okay, you're going to come up to it. I think it's chapter 4 or 5.
Yep.
So the idea is this. So the founder pitched his idea. The angel investor is like, yeah, I kind of like what you're doing. There's something there, not what you think. And they end up kind of putting it on the side, going in different directions. So he's got to go through customer discovery again.
Mhm.
So the concept that I have is before you build anything, before you build your app, buy a pack of index cards and sketch the screens for your app on those index cards. Sketch them out. Or you can use balsamic, whatever it is. And then when you're talking to someone, say, hey, Colin, listen, here's what I want you to do. I want you to pretend that you got this app. You just downloaded it.
Mhm.
And I want you to interact with it the way you would if it was on your phone. I'm going to give you the home screen. Just touch whatever you would touch. Do it as if it was the
Mhm.
screen. Don't ask me questions because I'm not going to be there when you do it.
Mhm.
Just figure it out. The one thing I'll ask you to do, Colin, is just verbalize what you're thinking because I can't read your mind and I'm really interested in what you're thinking. So just say it out loud. So in the context of the book, the entrepreneur Marcus is talking to a woman who's a real estate agent because that's he's thinking it might be his target market, and he's giving her these packs of index cards, and like she's touching this, she's not touching that, and they're navigating through the site, and she's like, well, I'm not really sure like what's going to happen when I press this, am I going to hear a warning or not a warning, and like so like you learn a lot about it, and what's equally important is you learn if you do this 20, 30, 40 times sometimes people don't touch any of those buttons. And you're like, well, why didn't you touch these buttons? And you're doing the debrief at the end. So I don't know what they did. Or like, yeah, that's not really that important for me. And both of those are really important lessons, right? The latter means don't build that.
Mhm.
The former means like your UX is a problem. If you really think it's valuable, you got to figure out a better way to communicate that in a natural way. But all that lesson you can learn that two ways. One, you can go into that room, into the sweat lodge, pull on your hoodie, and sit down in a dark room and code your app, or maybe cheat with Lovable, and like come out and like, ba bump, here's my app, right? 3 months of no salary later, or you can buy yourself, for like $5 or less, a pack of index cards and a pen, right? So which way do you want to do it?
Yeah. I mean, saving time and getting the feedback from the customers that you're going to be
Absolutely.
using it makes more sense. Definitely.
Yeah.
Cool.
And
Well,
then for the people who are like, oh, but I do want to do a cold email. Yeah, I got different chapters for you guys to read.
yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Very interesting. What case study most changes how readers plan sprints as
You mean
far
from the book or
yes,
Jeff?
correct, from the
Yeah. So
book.
the index card is probably the most kind of transformative in the way people approach things because embedded in it, it's like, how do I learn what I need to learn faster and cheaper? Like, what
Mhm.
can I test for $1? What can I test for free? It's like a mentality. And if you get into like that mentality of saying, wait, why am I doing this when I can get an easier and quicker way to get the answer I need? You're just speeding everything up. It's a
Hmm.
change in mindset entirely. So
Hmm.
that's the most transformative in like, kind of newbie mistakes to, bringing out a new product.
Yeah, and I did touch on in the book about interviewing as well, and just gaining some information on um, if this product was available, would you use it, and then what would you want to see in it, basically, which is
Yeah.
quite.
Yeah. I'm all about revealed preference.
Uh
So
huh.
I'll give you like, I think this is in the book too, right? If you ask somebody how much, would you buy this? Would you spend X for it? They're all like, yeah, man, that's awesome. Right. But that data is useless because no one wants you to think they're a cheap bastard. So
Hmm.
if you really want like good data, then you say, okay, Colin, I love that you love this. I want you to think about your peers. Like the other people are in the same position, same problem. Do you think they would pay, whatever for this? Like, oh man, no, they're cheap bastards, or they don't really get tech. Well, that data is far more indicative of like what you're going to face than like, hey, would you use this?
Uh huh.
Just one little tip and trick if you have to ask, but I'd much rather just put it in front of them or a mock up in front of them and see what they do.
Totally. Totally. And in order to get a clear, concise information, how do you go ahead and find these people to interview or to test the product idea out?
Well, ideally, they should be the customers you're going to sell to, right? So if like,
Hmm.
let's say you're a B2B company, most people going into a business to business type startup, they're coming from industry.
Hmm.
So, they got a couple of people that are in there, but they know them from trade shows, they know them from like there are other people in the company in the similar roles. So you can pick up the phone and say, hey, man, can I run my new idea by you? But you have to be careful because they're your friends and peers. They don't want to crap all over it. So you got to give them permission to be brutally honest with you.
Hmm.
So you got to say things like, listen, Colin, you are not going to hurt my feelings.
Hmm.
Like, no matter what you say, you're not going to hurt my feelings. I promise that. What's more, like, this could be the next 3 years of my life. I could
Hmm.
be going without salary for a lot of time here.
Hmm.
So if this isn't what the market needs, I need to learn it now.
Hmm.
So, whatever, you just tell me like it is. Because if worst case scenario, if you kill this idea, you saved me 3 years of my life. And I'll thank you for it. You got to really go out of your way to make people comfortable doing it. But you'll have your first couple of interviews in that case, just through your own network, usually. Uh, I'm actually on the other side of that right now. There's an app that the app that the book is written about is a simplified version of an app that I'm working on with a few other guys. We have it to the point where we're ready to release it. It's an Android first app for technical reasons. And it's actually been surprisingly difficult to find people in New York with Android phones to test it. I'm sure if I was in the Midwest, it would be a lot easier. But in New York or in the West Coast, like, look around. Like, we're few
It's
and far
iPhones.
between. Yeah, so like, I kid you not. I went, on the iPhones is a sent with love for my iPhone, like the sign.
Yeah.
So I went through and I searched for like sent for my Android, sent for my Samsung, just to see if anyone had that in their signature. Out of
Ah.
desperation, I found 3 people who had that. One of whom, when I said, "Would you do it?" He's like, "I'd love to, but I just got an iPhone." So yeah,
That's
I can't
hilarious.
make that up. So it
No.
can be harder, but there are services sometimes where you can pay for people to test.
Hmm.
That's iffy. There were some guys in the accelerator when I ran it. This wasn't iPhone, Android, had nothing to do with that, but it was consumer focused. They went into Starbucks and they stood there and they said, "Hey, Colin, man, uh, they were in a company T-shirt, so it was a little bit less weird. Listen, I got a startup. We're really early stage. We're looking for customers to talk to test it with. If I buy your latte, your cappuccino, would you sit with me for 5 minutes and like give me your feedback on it?" And that worked because
Hmm.
they were general purpose. Their entire everybody was their target. It's a little
Totally.
different if it's like an app for moms. I mean, I guess you could go do the same thing at a playground, though there's definitely a creep factor if you're just hanging out at
Yes.
playgrounds. But like there's probably a way you can do that, but
Totally.
you gotta be a little creative about that.
Yeah, it's very guerrilla marketing isk kind of thing.
By
It's
hook or by
just
crook.
thinking outside of the box, which is pretty cool. So, what's the Odyssey you still haven't taken yet in your life, but want to?
Mm, interesting. And I may actually be taking those steps. Like I've been, I'll tell you, so I've been on a lot of sides of this table, right?
Mhm.
I've been a founder, right? I've been an investor. The accelerator is sort of in between sometimes. It's a little bit of a hybrid. I've been, I've been the advisors to it. I've been on the customer side in some cases. I've developed customer networks. Um, I'm actually moving a little bit. I'm tipping my toes into the banker side, and I'll tell you what
Hmm.
I mean by that. So remember we were talking about like why should I raise my entire company like around with equity or should I take debt? Like questions like that start to come up in when you're done with your A round and your B round, right? When you're talking about those, when you're thinking about raising a B round, like one of the questions you should be asking is, do I really want to do this at all, right? Truth is, if you raise money in your B round, you've just raised the bar on what you need to exit by 4 or 5 times,
Oh,
which means you're
wow.
going to spend another 3, 4, 5 years at this before you have another chance to exit. It's very realistic to ask yourself, like, if I can sell it now, is that a better outcome for me?
Mhm.
The ROI might even be better for my investors because they get their money faster.
Mhm.
But it's worth thinking: do I want to sell or do I want to keep going? If I keep going, do I want it to be, all equity? Do I want it to be equity and debt? Or maybe I'm in a situation where, like, I raise the B. There are a lot of companies sort of in the same pace as I am. We're all kind of stuck here. No one's totally at scale. Maybe I go big and I raise a ton of money and I buy up my competitors, right? I'm number one or two. I'm going to buy up four and five. Then I'm going to buy
Yeah.
up three or four, right? It's good. You
Yeah.
roll it up, and that's one way to win at it. These are all banker questions.
Mhm.
So I have been, at various points looking for bankers to like connect my startups with. And the tricky part is there's no shortage of bankers that'll do, no shortage of good bankers that'll do $100 million plus deals. All right. They're good at it. You'll find people who know your industry left, right, and center. Awesome. But if you're talking about 10, 20, $30 million transactions, it's a lot harder to find a good
Hmm.
banker. You get a lot of generalists, they don't know your space that well. You get some people who couldn't hack it at the majors, so they're playing in the minors. You
Ah.
get some people who just love that. Like that's what they're really good at. But from the outside, it's hard to tell, who's a superstar, who's a lemon. So I've been on my side of the table, like struggling with this problem for a while. I've met an interesting group of people who are all founders first, who've gone through the same thing, and they've created an interesting type of call it that, but sort of an investment bank that specializes in working at that layer, but coming at it with the founder's mentality of, Colin, what do you want to do? What's the win for
Mhm.
you? Great.
Mhm.
You thought you wanted to raise a B round. That might not be the right answer.
Mhm. Let's
So I started
explore
to
these
work with
other
them.
options.
They're really good people, really interesting people. They're good at what they do. So I may be doing that. That may be my next Odyssey.
Hmm. Yeah, that sounds really interesting, Andrew. Like,
Or maybe I'll
um,
raise a fund. Who knows?
who knows? The options are endless, right? Very cool. So we made it to your shut up moment. This is the moment where I ask all my guests, like a point in time that was an inflection point, or people were telling you, Andrew, you can't do it, or you kind of felt like just throwing your gloves off and like being done with, startup world or entrepreneurship. What was that moment for you? And talk through that a little
Yeah, so for me, it was less someone telling me to shut up, but then there being like this sound of silence when I like, well, who can I ask about what I want to do?
bit.
So we talked a little bit about that moment when I'm leaving consulting and trying to getting into the startup, like how to maneuver that was kind of difficult. Um, after I had a couple of inflection points. So, like when I left the family office, I did another startup. That startup was a great learning experience, meaning like it was horrible. It failed miserably, uh, and it was kind of tough after that, right? So it was kind of tough after that. It took me a good year to kind of recreate myself painstakingly, trial and error, position myself as like, well, I've been a founder, I've been an angel investor, like what's the next step for me, right?
Mhm.
Until I figured out that the accelerator thing was a good idea, and before I kind of maneuvered myself into a position where like I was attractive for that role. Um, it was tough. Like no one was telling me I couldn't do it. There just was nobody around me who was telling me what to do, and that was kind of equally scary, if not more.
Totally. Totally. Interesting. Yeah, very, very interesting. Um, so we I know we don't have that much time left. I want to ask just a couple more questions.
Sure.
And thank you so much. Like this has been absolutely incredible, and I hope all the listeners and the watchers will really enjoy your episode. Um, if you were starting a company today, what wedge would you pick, and why now?
Mm. So listen, it's fairly simple. We got a lot of technological change that's happening right now between,
Hmm.
I'll say it, AI, between robotics, and different flavors of AI, like machine vision, speech to text. All of these things were things that didn't work that well,
Hmm.
or didn't work at all, or weren't easily accessible a mere 3, 4, 5 years ago. So if you're looking for something that is like a step level change that's opened the door to new possibilities, there's a lot of those out there. Like blockchain isn't fully played out, though.
Hmm.
It's gotten to the point where people have been playing with that long enough. If that's your differentiator, maybe not. So there's lots of why nows out there, but at the end of the day, here's a painful problem. It still exists. Does this solution, this new technology in this case, make a difference? But there's also other why nows. Like you could come up with a why now. Like we went from a primarily free trade international trading environment to an age of taraffs again. That's hugely
Hmm.
disruptive,
Hmm.
right? And it's created a lot of pain, and where there's
Hmm.
pain, there's an opportunity for solutions.
Yep.
So, that's a potential why now. So, really, I would start out like, what do you know? What problems do you experience firsthand? And like, are there now solutions that weren't available before? Or in the case that I gave before, are there new problems that didn't exist a while ago, but now it is a problem? So,
Hmm.
now it needs to be solved.
Definitely. And then, advice for anyone who might be experiencing threat of layoffs due to AI or downsizing of a company, but
Mm.
maybe technology is not their forte. Maybe them not founding a company is their forte. What kind of pieces of advice do you have for them to be able to find their solution for their income?
Yeah, so that's a tough one, right? So in the long run, all these tools end up boosting productivity and making us all better off. In the
Mm-hmm.
long run, uh, people don't leave resources sitting on the table. So if there are people out there that are good for something, they'll ultimately be used for something. But the transition can be brutal, right? Especially if you're on the kind of edge of retirement, but you didn't want to retire this early.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like, well, is he too old or she too old to like bring this in? So it can be really tough. The human cost is real. The only thing I can say to people is, at the end of the day, I don't think that AI is going to replace as many jobs so much as it's going to change a lot of jobs.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to cultivate the mindset that this is really cool. This is new stuff that I can do, right? If you love what you're doing, then you should love the opportunity to do it better.
Mm-hmm.
And the tools can, if you don't love what you're doing, maybe like early retirement's a blessing, who knows? But if you really love what you're doing or like it well enough to want to do it, you want to do it better. Uh, it's a little bit like going out in the rain. Like the first moment you go out in the rain, you're like, oh, I gotta, I want to stay under all the scaffolding so I don't get wet. But at one point, you're just so wet, you're like, to hell with it. It's not that cold out. I'll just get wet. And it's like when you start running, right? That first, the first 100, 200 feet, your body's like, yeah, I don't really want to do this. Let's go home. And then when you tell it to go F itself and you keep going, like, then it's like, oh, okay, then I'm going to stop complaining. Let's get into it. It's like that with
Totally.
tech, right?
Mm-hmm.
You just got to get over the hump, get over the inertia, start playing with it. And once you're into it, like then you start getting deeper and deeper into it. So I guess my one, if I had to sum it up for those guys is, um, unless you're ready to like, just coast the rest of the way, unless you can, uh, just get wet. You got to get wet. The sooner you get wet, the better.
Totally, totally. Good piece of advice. And let's take it even to Gen Z. So I've had a lot of interactions with Gen Z right now. I keep on hearing the same thing over and over. Graduated from college with a degree, no interviews. My friends are in the same space and they're working at Domino's if they could get a job at this moment. What do you recommend for them to do in this climate? Because it seems like AI has taken over or has eliminated entry level positions for them.
So I don't know if that's happened yet. I think it's a very real possibility. I don't think that's happened yet. I think a large part of the problem they're having is we're at a not a great part in the economic cycle.
Hmm.
All right, this is not a great part in the economic cycle. Companies are a little worried,
Hmm.
tariffs, that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
Will there be inflation? Won't there be inflation? Like uncertainty is horrible for companies trying to make long-term decisions, and like hiring is a long-term decision.
Totally.
So they're like, well, on the margin, let's take 2 people instead of three,
Hmm.
6 people instead of eight. Like that ripples. Like that's a big deal if you're coming out at that moment in time. Now, it happens to be happening at the same time with AI. I just don't think the companies have adopted AI deeply enough for it to have changed what they're doing, with some exceptions, right? Depends on the industry. So I think it's very much changing. The number one thing you can do as a new hire, a new graduate, or in general in life, is find something that makes you stand out in a demonstrable way to be that much better than your competition. So I'll give you an example. When I was applying to join Dream It, right? The skills they were looking for, the characteristics they were looking for, is people who had been there and done that as an entrepreneur, and had good networks with which to recruit startups, a good platform for recruiting startups into it, and three, uh, had good networks of potential investors or the ability to bring them in through the door. Now, I know the people that were looking at the same jobs I were, and I know I was looking for some of the same jobs they were, and they had good networks, right? And were former entrepreneurs. Now, what made me stand out to a certain degree was a decision I'd made a year and a half earlier, which was when a friend of mine was starting up a publication called Alley Watch. She was the editor in chief. And I said, listen, Bonnie, that's awesome. I wish you the best of luck. Let me know how I can help. And she said, she's like uh, 4'8". She's like, you will write for Alley Watch. Right? Because she knew I was like, I like to play around with writing a little bit. So, okay, I'll write an article for Alley Watch. She goes, no, you will write a column. And like, I remember thinking, like, I have a day job. I don't have time to like just write for free. But
Hmm.
in one of the few like actually in the moment smart things I did, I said, Bonnie, let me think about that. So I said, well, this would be interesting. How can I do this so that it doesn't really eat into everything I need to do? And I said, well, okay, and how do I do it so I'm writing something people care about, and
Hmm.
it's not like the same old that I find boring. So thinking back, this is like 2012, 2013. Angel investors are kind of really hard to find, right? There was no AngelList back in the day. So I said, Bonnie, I know a bunch of angels. I'm going to do interviews with angel investors. I'll ask them like the same 20 questions. I'll pick whatever's interesting, and I'll have like a 1-page brief. I could do maybe one a month. What do you think? It's like, okay, that works. So I did those. I pumped out like nowadays you'd probably have to do it one every 3 days, but back then I was like, okay, once a month was fine. It took an hour for the interview. It took me an hour to like transcribe and pull out what I wanted, which I did manually because we didn't have any speech to text or text to speech tools. We didn't have any of that. So it was like 2 hours a month, and I got to meet people or reconnect with people who were like, peers of mine. So then fast forward to when I'm interviewing with Dream It, like, hey, we all have networks, right? We all know investors, we all know startups. But hey, this is interesting. Andrew's got this column that he writes once a month, and a lot of startups read it because they're reading about investors. So he's got like a leg up on like sourcing startups. And well, he's interviewing a lot of angel investors. So like, well, yeah, I mean, these are angels that like he demonstrably knows. And that's all it took for me to stand up just a little bit higher
Hmm.
than the other candidates at that point in time. I don't know what they had. They probably had other stuff too, but this was what I think got me over the hump. So if I'm a soon to be, or I am a college graduate, like what are the things people are looking for as employers? Well, they want to know that you know what this whole AI thing is. Can you use it? It's like, yeah,
Totally.
I took these courses. That's great. What can you do that is demonstrable? Like, obviously, point to it. Done. Like,
Mhm.
maybe I got my interns who are helping me with the book. They've done these video Gen AI videos where, like, the guy on the cover he's like running through the maze. I want to do more of them. That's great.
Yeah.
When they go to apply for jobs, like, well, what are you doing with AI? Like, I made these.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah,
you want to
have a
have something you
portfolio.
can point to that will stand out. Like, yeah, everyone says they did it, but come on, man, he did something cool. Did you see what he did? So
Mhm.
that's the advice I'd give him.
Yeah. Love that. That's really cool. Very, very cool. Two more questions. We're just about at time. So funding always comes up with anyone who is thinking about starting a business and taking that leap. What creative solutions do you have as far as not necessarily advice, but uh, different kind of sources of funding that could be creative for people to start, no matter the amount of money they think they need?
Yeah. So you're going to start with basically your own pocket. You got to
Hmm.
start with your own pocket. There are guys back in the day where we've been pitched a bunch of e-commerce sites. Like, yeah, every $100 you come in is like $2,000 of sales in like a month and a half. I'm like, that's awesome. Are your credit cards maxed out? Like, what do you mean? I'm like, listen, if you can get paid back in a month, 10x, you should be maxing out all your credit cards.
Hmm.
Right now, most companies don't work that way, and that was a little bit of a gotcha on my part. But if you really do have something like that, then self finance as much as you can. Friends, family, and fools are going to be your first money out. There's nothing super, crazy or original about that. The best
Hmm.
thing I could say to you is cultivate a mindset of what can I do with very little money, right?
Hmm.
And take it a step back, right? I can simulate what my company is going to look like to a large degree in a spreadsheet, right? If I hire two more enterprise salespeople, it'll take them 3 months until they get up to speed. But once they're up to
Yep.
speed, they're going to generate, I don't know, like $15,000 sales per client per month. Right? So I can simulate, like, if I do things right, how a hiring decision in May impacts my revenue in September and all the costs that flow through on that. And then I can play with the different variables, right? I think it's going to take them 3 months to get up to speed. What if it takes them six
Hmm.
months? I
Hmm.
think they can sell 3 clients a month. What happens if they can only sell two?
Yeah.
And you can figure out which ones of those variables really make or break your company. And when you found them, and there's usually only two or three, sometimes even it's just one, you ask yourself, okay, before I take investor money, is there any way I can test this?
Hmm.
Is there any way I can test this and move it from like a guess to like some fact based assumption? If you do that, then when you do go in there and say, hey, Colin, listen, I'm raising $2 million for my seed round. And then you call and you come back to me and say, well, did you try this? I did. This is what I did. Did you try that? Like, and you go through and like, wow, this founder has done everything they can possibly do to de-risk their startup before asking for money. Like,
Hmm.
you know, you're still asking for money. It's not the most creative way to do it, but at least you're doing it right. At least you're
Hmm.
maximizing your chance of getting a yes.
Cool. Cool. Thank you. One last question. What is one piece of advice that you would give to a founder or even someone who wants to start their own small business? What is that one piece of advice that you would give to them?
Cultivate empathy. We already talked
Mm.
about the other one, which is loosely held but well-reasoned opinions. But I'll say the other one
Mm-hmm.
is cultivate empathy, right? So empathy, as opposed to sympathy. Sympathy is, oh man, I can see you're in pain. Empathy is, oh, I feel that pain. And the reason that's critical is you're putting yourself in the mind of the other person so deeply that you can understand what moves them, what
Mm.
pains them, what excites them, what makes them happy. And if you can do that, it will help you across the board. It will help you come up with products that you can sell, right? It'll help you figure out better ways to sell them. It'll help you raise money better because you'll understand what the VCs are looking for. It'll
Mm-hmm.
help you hire better because you'll understand what motivates your employees, what excites them to get behind you in that mission. Like cultivating empathy will pay dividends in everything that you do as a founder, and possibly even in life in general.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Thank you for that. You're definitely the first one that that said empathy for that question. So very
Ooh, I'd
cool.
love to see what the list of other things people said. I'll get that from you later.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Andrew, I really appreciate you jumping on. Really, really awesome to have met you through Podmatch, and thank you for this wonderful interview. And just being so raw and open, and really giving some really wonderful advice to entrepreneurs or people that are thinking about entrepreneurism and taking that leap. So, thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Wonderful. And then, Andrew, anyone that wants to be able to connect with you or find your book, where should they be able to find you?
Sure, sure. So if they're curious about just me in general and they want a good, good all-purpose place to go is, wait, did I do this right? It's my website, Andrew, the letter B as in boy, Ackerman.com. I'll give you a little bit of background on me. You can also look me up on LinkedIn. It's pretty, pretty clear what I've done professionally that way. And not coincidentally, you can find links to buy the book there. So, shocking that.
Shocking. You're hilarious. Well, cool. Well, Andrew, thank you very much. I hope you have a wonderful evening, and hopefully this interview is a great start to your week as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.